Hello, everyone. You are listening to Kingdom Stories, where we tell stories of hope and power from the lives of everyday Christians just like you and me. It's my hope that these stories encourage you in your walk with the Lord and remind you weekly about how awesome our God is. Hey, everybody. I'm here with my sister, Daphne. Want to say hi, Daphne?
Hi,
All right, Daphne, you want to give us a little bit of a background, where you came from, who you are, what you want people to know about you?
definitely. So I'm a mother of four kids and a bonus child. Happy to do all of the kid stuff. Currently working for a chiropractor as a massage therapist. Ministry wise, I'm still trying to get plugged into a new church as we change states. It's really one of those reasons why I wanted to do this show. And I'm so excited to tell my story.
All right, let's hear it. Want to dive right into it?
So I had a really, really rough childhood. I witnessed my father get shot over some drugs, which
Wow.
I don't remember, which is great, But CPS came and took me away from my biological parents and placed me into foster care for a little bit. And then until I was 14, I was raised in a Christian home with my foster parents. And I did end up getting adopted when I was 8. But even growing up in a stable household, there was a lot of issues. And we attended church every Sunday. It was kind of one of the best things about my childhood. But being a fairly intelligent person, had a lot of questions. That doesn't always work for church. And so I would see people who would blindly believe, and I'd want to be those people. I see them so on fire for the Lord and so happy, but it just wasn't me. I always had questions. I always wondered how it worked, the mechanics of everything, wanted proof, so to speak.
Mm-hmm.
And there really wasn't anybody who wanted to answer my questions or could answer my questions. So a lot of times I was told that faith meant just blindly trusting and that that's what I should do. And
Hmm.
I couldn't do that. So at that point, I had kind of said, oh, well, this God thing isn't for me. When I was 13, the mom that raised me found my biological mom and basically said, I don't want to do this anymore. Here you go. She's all yours.
Wow.
And that meant moving to a different state. So I moved to Colorado for a year, and it was a huge culture shock, but also a really traumatic part of my life. And so I went from stability to just kind of this chaos. We were always moving, mostly from motel rooms, and they were not like your regular Motel 6 or any of those type things. It was like the worst places you could ever live.
Wow.
And so one of them we were living in, it was just so run down and so horrible. You didn't even want to go outside the door because you were going to be offered drugs. Even at 13, I was going to be offered drugs. I was going to be offered money for sex.
What?
Like it was just, yes, you'd get these creepy people, and like it was that type of place where you just felt gross, being there.
Mm-hmm.
And my biological mother, she worked as a waitress during the day, but then she'd go gamble and drink with people at night and often would stay out with men or just disappear, and I couldn't get a hold of her.
Wow.
I had lots of brothers and sisters, and they were all under the age of 10 at the time. And I was the oldest, so I was in charge of taking care of them all.
Oh my.
One evening, at this hotel room. I was getting into a fight with my brother, who was the next oldest. And my brother and I were arguing, and I told him to go take a shower. Now, the light was out in the bathroom, but after this argument, he went in, slammed the door, and the fixture actually fell down on his head. So he comes out, and there's blood everywhere. No glass in his head or anything like that, not punctured, but he did have a good sized cut gash from it falling on his head. So I went to the ice machine, which was outside of the room, down the hall. And when I was out there, these two men took an interest and were kind of catcalling me. I was just ignoring them, trying to get back to the room, help my brother. So I did that. Well, they started calling up the room every hour, threatening to come up, rape me, saying obscene things. And for me, that became very scary very quickly. I'm trying to nurse my brother. The lock on the door actually did not work.
What?
It's just me and these little kids.
Mm.
I was afraid to call the police because I figured they would come and see how we were living, and then all my brothers and sisters would be gone and I would never see them. Didn't really want to end up in the system. And there was a lot of unknowns and kind of scary things in there. So at this point, it's like 1, 2 in the morning, and they're still calling. And I am really freaking out at this point. I was only 13. And so part of me was just screaming. I just needed some sort of help. I really felt like that was my rock bottom. And coming from a Christian background, there was this voice that said, just pray. Try it. Just pray. And I did pray. And the phone call stopped, thankfully. We got through the night safely. When my mom finally did come back the next day, she saw the gash on my brother's head and took us out of there within a day or two. And we were in a better motel, but still not the best. And that was kind of my life. And so that just started a cycle of, okay, we'll just pray and see what happens. So I started keeping a journal and seeing that the things that I was praying, even though they weren't always answered or directly answered, a lot of the times they were. Well, then I started, well, maybe you should start going to church. And church became this kind of safe haven for me again. And then people started showing up that could answer my question, that were giving me what I needed to grow. And that took time. It took probably 5 or 6 years for me to really feel like I was solid in my belief that there is a God and that he does love me. And that took a little more time to get that he does love me.
Yeah.
When I graduated high school, I had just broken up with a man that I thought I was going to marry, and I was heartbroken. We'd been dating for 4.5 years. Like I said, I thought he was the man that I was going to marry. And I met a man who had a very strong Christian background. And he also was able to push me into growing as a Christian. When that relationship ended, also around the 4.5 year mark, I found my daughter's father. And unbeknownst to me, he was a drug addict and was selling drugs.
Wow.
And when I found that out, I was pregnant. And he became abusive really quickly. He broke into my apartment when my roommate was home, like smashed through the door. We had to get a new lock and stuff. He would leave me like 50 voicemails, cuss me out, and change my doctor's appointments, show up randomly. So there was a quick realization that it was going to be better for me to be a single mom than to have him co-parent with me.
Mm-hmm.
And he was very, very okay with that.
He didn't want to be a father?
No, he did not. So again, I was praying, I was trying to make the right choices. Do I have an abortion? Do I, you know, I was only 21 at the time when I was pregnant with my first daughter. Do I make this commitment to have a child? Do I put the child up for adoption? Don't really have a stable job. I'm just getting out of starting school. What do I do here? And I made the decision to have my daughter and also to keep her. And that was definitely one of the best decisions I ever had in my life. When she was born, she tried to come 8 weeks early, ended up coming 6 weeks early. But that whole time I was praying again, just really trying to see what God wanted. What was He going to do in my life and now my daughter's life? When she was in the NICU, I did not leave her side for a single second. I slept, ate everything right there by her bedside, held her any chance that I could. They actually let her go home early because I was doing all the work. They figured I might as well just do it at my house.
Wow.
So that was really hard for me going through all of that. But I really trusted that God was going to make it all okay and make it all work out. We ended up living with the mom that raised me for about a year. And that was one of the worst decisions I ever made in my life. My foster mother and I pretty much disagree on everything. We're both very opinionated and strong willed. And so that can be difficult living in a household together. And we really had different ideas on how to raise a baby. And being the mother of my daughter, it was very hard for me to always do things her way. And if I didn't do things her way, it would cause this huge, huge fight. So that eventually accumulated into me and my daughter getting kicked out. And that was right around her first birthday. And I didn't know where we were going to go. I didn't know what we were going to do. And I was talking with this friend I hadn't talked to in a while. And she said, "Hey, my mother has a room that sometimes she lets people stay in. Maybe you guys can stay there." And the couple that we ended up staying with was just amazing. They had a huge ranch. When we got there, one of my first questions is, "How quickly do you need me to move out?" And I remember feeling all this stress and pressure of, I don't want us to be out on the street. We've been bouncing around couches for a while. I don't want this to turn into a bad situation. These people are trying to help us out. I don't want to take advantage of them. But here I have this baby. And, I'm not sure what the expectation is. And I remember her looking at me and telling me that we could just see how things go. There wasn't really a time limit and that we could stay there for as long as we wanted and work on getting on our feet and life together and all of this. That evening, she looked at me and said, "You're a great mom." And I think I cried for an hour because that was the first time anybody had ever said that to me. Her and her husband really spoke truth into our lives and helped us to get on our feet and to get into a good situation. And my children today even still call them grandma and grandpa. It's been amazing the people that God has put into our lives to mentor us and take care of us and to give us a family when we haven't really had that.
So this couple with the ranch, they were Christians?
They are. They actually have a ministry in Southern California going into prisons and ministering to people there.
Wow. They sound like an awesome couple.
They are. They're just one of the most amazing people. I mean, both of them are really great, but but where I wanted to get to is when I split up with my other two children's dad, we ended up moving again. And right as we moved into this apartment, I really had nothing. I was completely tapped out, getting together a deposit and rent money and everything essential we kind of needed for this apartment. But with that, I wasn't sure. Well, I was also starting a new business. I was starting my own business in massage. So it was the first time I wasn't working for another company. And this was at the end of November, middle of November, and Christmas was coming up. And the first thing was looking at the amount of clients that I had booked and the amount of money that I was going to make that month. I didn't know how I was going to buy gas. I didn't know how I was going to buy food. I could pay my electric, but I didn't know where my phone bill was going to come from or any of it. And then I'm looking at this whole situation and going, okay, my kids are going to expect Christmas.
Mm.
And we've always done a tree, we've always done gifts. I always buy them lots of things. And this year, I don't know how I'm going to do that. So being a planner, and I'm sure you've done this too, you look at, okay, well, this is the amount that I need.
Mm-hmm.
This is the amount that I need for bills. And this is how much I would like to spend on things like Christmas, And so I really, really started praying. I said, Lord, I don't know how I'm going to do this. I don't have enough clients booked. Maybe I make my bills. Maybe I don't. If anybody cancels, I'm really in a bind here. And I was talking with a friend and expressing my concerns. And she prayed with me. And then she looked at me and she said, you know what? I'm going to make you a bag out of my pantry. And just, whatever we don't eat or haven't eaten in a while, I'm going to put it in this bag. You can take it home and that'll give you something, a start, just a day or two, maybe something. Well, then there was a couple in the apartment building that was also moving out. And they didn't want to take their food with them. And so we got more cans and refrigerator items and things that we could eat. The next morning, literally the next morning, I was dropping my daughter off at school, and one of her friend's moms comes up and says, hey, my daughter needs some place to go in the morning before school. And if you're willing to drop her off at school in the mornings, I will give you this much every week for gas. And it was $40.
Wow.
And I was like, there's my gas money. Yeah, I will totally do that. And, so then I started losing clients, which is kind of the way it goes. You get some people who cancel, who reschedule. And this being the first month that I have my business open, that was really scary. I wasn't even sure I was going to be able to make my bills. But because it was Christmas, I also had a lot of people buying gift certificates and things like that, which is bonus money. And so I ended up being able to pay all of my bills for that month, which was great. And then people from the church offered to buy things for the children, friends, family. Also were, trying to help us out with Christmas tree and lights and cookies and all kinds of stuff. And so my kids were already starting to have the holiday that I wanted for them.
Wow.
And I was looking at all these things, and unfortunately, my heart was not content because I wanted to buy my children something. I wanted to give them good memories. growing up, and I didn't want them to feel like they were ever lacking in anything. This was another opportunity for prayer, and this was something that I struggled with, kind of that mom guilt in that moment. And I kid you not, at the end of the week, we go to church, and a friend walks up to me and says, "Here, I have this change jar. I didn't know what it was going to be for, but I needed to bring it to church, and I want you to have it."
Wow.
And then another friend comes up to me and says, "Daphne, you will not believe what happened." And I said, "What?" And she said that there was a couple in the church that I had never met, but he saw me with my children as a single mom, and his wife had just passed away, and he wanted to do something just as a ministry, and he donated $300 to us.
Wow.
And I just remember bawling. I was in tears. And that is a moment that really stands out to me because God met all of my needs. I couldn't do it on my own. There was no way with all the clients and all the stuff. I couldn't. And I remember struggling with that knowledge. But that is one real opportunity where I can say that all my needs were met.
Wow.
And more. Because I didn't need to, go out and buy all the gifts for my kids and, do Christmas all up and everything. But God was very generous with me in those moments.
Wow.
And throughout my life, if I look back, there's so many places. I gave you a couple examples today, but there are so many places that God has really helped me to thrive and brought me through whatever I was going through.
That's awesome. It's interesting. It says in James, right? Pure and undefiled religion is to care for the orphans and widows in their affliction, right? And I know single mother isn't necessarily the same thing as widow in modern society, but it's still pretty close. And I find it amazing how much God cares about single mothers. Just like story after story, you've got tons of stories. I've heard them from other people. I have my own story of watching God take care of them, but just seeing how much he cares, and I think it's awesome that you have such a strong story of just like, what was it? My cup runneth over.
Yes, definitely. And like I said, that's definitely one moment that I can pick out and I can say, "Hey, look, God loves me." He did blank, 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 blank. But there are really so many of those throughout my whole life. And I am so blessed. And I really would just encourage anybody who is struggling to just pray. Just give it up to God. Watch what he does.
God, he's like a dad. He wants, just like you want to give good gifts to your children, he wants to give good gifts to his children,
Definitely.
I think your story is a prime example of that. All right. That was a good story. Had me on the edge of my seat, metaphorically speaking. You did a great job. Your first podcast interview.
Yes.
All right, Daphne. Well, thank you for your story, and I hope it encourages some people out there today.
Bye.
If you liked the story today, please don't hesitate to spread the love. Share it, like it, and subscribe to hear more. If you want to share a story from your life about an encounter with God, please don't hesitate to email me at jesse@newawakeningministries.org. Stay safe and remember, the kingdom is among us.